the unseen guest. In the chaos of a school-wide evacuation, we often assume that leaving the building is the ultimate goal for everyone. But for one student who stayed behind during a false alarm, the realization quickly set in that while the halls were empty of students, they were far from unoccupied. It was a humid Thursday afternoon, the kind of day where the air feels heavy enough to breathe. I was in the digital media lab, tucked away in a soundproof editing suite at the very end of the arts wing. I had my noise-canceling headphones on, lost in the rhythm of cutting together a video project, completely oblivious to the world outside my cubicle. It wasn't until I felt a strange vibration through the floorboards that I realized something was wrong. I pulled my headphones off just in time to hear the tail end of a frantic announcement over the intercom. "Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. All students to the stadium." I poked my head out of the suite, expecting to see a crowd, but the lab was a ghost town. The hallway outside was even worse, long, fluorescent lit, and utterly silent. I checked my phone. I had 12 missed calls from my mom and a string of panicked texts from my friends. I started toward the exit, but then I heard it. The heavy mechanical clack of the main wing doors being locked from the outside. I was sealed in, just as I turned to find another way out. The motion sensor lights in the hallway timed out, plunging the corridor into a murky, half-lit gray. At the far end of the hall, near the stairwell, a door creaked open. A man stepped out, but he wasn't wearing a uniform or a visitor's badge. He was wearing a heavy trench coat that seemed far too warm for the weather, and he was holding a master key ring that jingled with a sound like sharpening knives. The silence that followed the jingle of those keys was suffocating. I retreated into the media lab, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I didn't want to make a sound, but every movement felt like a betrayal. The carpeted floor of the lab, usually so soft, seemed to amplify the friction of my sneakers. I navigated by the dim blue glow of the computer monitors that stayed awake, their screensavers dancing like ghosts across the walls. I crawled under the back row of editing desks, pressing myself against the cold metal legs and the tangled mess of power cables. Outside in the hallway, the footsteps began. They weren't hurried. They were slow, heavy, and rhythmic. The sound of someone who knew they had all the time in the world. I heard the jingle again, followed by the sound of a key sliding into a lock. The door to the art studio across the hall groaned open. I heard the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor, a screech of metal on tile that made me want to cover my ears. There was a series of dull thuds like heavy bags being dropped, and then the door clicked shut again. The footsteps moved closer to the media lab. My breath hitched in my throat, and I tried to focus on a single point on the underside of the desk to keep from spiraling into a full-blown panic. The lock on the lab door turned. The door didn't just open, it was pushed with a slow, deliberate force that suggested the person on the other side was savoring the moment. The man entered the room. I could see his shoes through the gap between the floor and the desk. Worn, mud-caked work boots that looked out of place in a clean school environment. He didn't search the room immediately. He stood by the door for a long time, just breathing. It was a heavy, whistling sound, like air being forced through a narrow pipe. Then he began to talk to himself. It wasn't a whisper. It was a low conversational tone. as if he were explaining a complex problem to an invisible companion. "They always leave the best things behind," he murmured. "They run away and leave the doors wide open for me." He began to walk through the rows of computers. He would stop at a station, click the mouse, and watch the screen flare to life. The flickering light from the monitors cast long, distorted shadows of his silhouette across my hiding spot. I watched his shadow grow larger as he approached my row. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that the darkness under the desk was deep enough. I could hear the metallic clink of his key ring as it swung from his belt with every step. He stopped at the desk directly above me. I could hear the creak of the chair as he sat down. The weight of him felt like it was pressing down on the very air I was breathing. He started typing. The rapid click-clack of the mechanical keyboard was deafening in the silent room. He wasn't browsing or looking for files. The rhythm was too consistent, too purposeful. After a few minutes, he stopped. I heard him sigh, a long, contented sound. "Found you," he whispered. My heart nearly stopped. I thought he was talking to me. I prepared to bolt, my muscles tensed and ready to spring. But then I heard the sound of a printer in the corner of the room whirring to life. The mechanical hum of the paper feeder felt like a countdown. He stood up and walked over to the printer. I risked a glance and saw him pick up a single sheet of paper. He looked at it for a moment, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his coat pocket. He didn't come back to the desk. Instead, he walked toward the back of the lab, toward the emergency exit that led to the parking lot. I heard him fumble with the heavy panic bar. "Better get moving before the parade comes back," he said to himself. With a final sharp, metallic snap, the door opened. A rush of hot, humid afternoon air flooded into the room, bringing with it the distant, muffled sounds of the crowd at the stadium. The door clicked shut, and he was gone. I stayed under that desk for another 20 minutes, my body trembling so hard I thought I would bruise myself against the metal legs. When I finally crawled out, my legs felt like lead. I walked over to the computer he had been using. The screen was still on. He hadn't been looking at my files or school records. He had been looking at the school's security feed, specifically the camera aimed at the stadium where the entire student body was gathered, completely exposed. The printer tray was empty, but on the screen, the last document he had opened was a high-resolution map of the school's underground utility tunnels with a single exit point marked in red, the center of the stadium floor. I didn't wait for the all clear announcement. I didn't call for help. I just ran. I slipped out the same emergency exit he had used and didn't stop until I reached my car. By the time the rest of the school was being filed back into the classrooms, I was miles away. I never told the administration why I left. I just told them I got caught in the panic and went home. But every time there's a fire drill or an evacuation now, I don't look at the exits. I look at the floor, wondering what's moving through the tunnels beneath us while we're all standing in the sun, thinking we're safe. The next time your school's intercom crackles to life, or a drill is called, remember that the scariest threats are the ones you never see coming. If these stories left you looking over your shoulder, make sure to click and watch our next video.